Today we've got a crazy revenge story on awful coworkers involving projectile liquids, but probably even worse than you would think. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, Pharmacist wants to know why I don't swallow pills. Now she knows. I, 28-year-old female, went to the doctor this morning because I felt sick. Turns out I have angina. My doctor knows I have a hard time swallowing pills due to a traumatic event in my life. I make do when I can't avoid it by dissolving them in water or breaking them down into tiny pieces. So when possible, she tries to find an alternative. In this case, a sort of syrup. It's made for babies, so I just need to take 3 times the dose. I went to a random pharmacy on the way to work. It's full of other customers, but at some point, it's my turn. The lady behind the counter seemed somewhat new there. She asked a lot of questions to her colleagues, but I didn't care. I handed her the prescription, my social security card, and my insurance company card. She did something on the computer, then turned to me. "It's for babies," she said coldly. I reply, "I know. I need to triple the dose. It's easier for me to take medicine that way." And instead of just giving me that dinged medicine so I can be on my way, she snorts. "Yeah, but you're an adult, and you are way over the required weight for the pills." I'm around 105 kg / 231 pounds, so thanks for the free fat shaming. I try to stay calm, even if I slept badly the last 2 nights. "I know, but I want the liquid medicine anyway. Just give me the bottles so I can go to work, please." She wasn't pleased but went to look for them, and she came back empty-handed. "We don't have any left. I need to order it. It'll be here on Thursday." As I was considering whether to order them here or try another pharmacy during my lunch break, she got impatient or something. "Don't you think it's childish to not swallow pills at your age?" She said that loud enough that the 2 pharmacists around her and a good dozen clients heard her. I blushed quickly but decided for once to push back. I was better at it before I tried to end things by swallowing sedatives when I was in high school. Sorry, nearly passing on makes it hard for me to swallow pills. I said it loud enough that everyone heard it. Her mouth closed and she turned pale. She stammered something, maybe an apology, I don't know. I took my prescription that was in front of her, the cards. I put everything in my handbag carelessly and I left. I was twitchy for the nerve. When I drove by the pharmacy a few minutes later, she wasn't behind the counter. I hope that'll teach her a lesson. Don't ask questions you're not 100% prepared to get the answer for. Edit, thanks everyone for your support. I felt so bad leaving the pharmacy this morning, but now I know I've done the right thing. Edit 2, I can't answer everyone and I read as many of you as I can. Thanks everyone for your testimony about your struggles. It's good to see that I'm not the only one and maybe it can help others too. I'll complain to the pharmacy, I'll ask my doctor for liquid alternatives, but I'll try all your techniques to help the pill go down. Update. On Tuesday after work, I went to another pharmacy with my prescription. The pharmacist, a bit surprised, asked me if I wanted the liquid like it was written or if I preferred pills. I answered that no, the liquid was working better for me, and she just gave me what I needed. That is exactly what should have happened with the other pharmacist. On Friday morning, I went back to the first pharmacy. I was nervous because even though I felt it was within my right to make a complaint about the pharmacist, I didn't like the idea of getting someone possibly fired. I waited until it wasn't too crowded, and I went to the only pharmacist I was 100% sure it wasn't the one I had the issue with, a man. So I was here on Tuesday morning for 3 bottles of medicine and it didn't go very well. He let out a long sigh. "With so-and-so's name, right?" I said, "Probably. I wasn't paying attention to who she was. I just wanted the medicine and to go to work." He replied, "That was name. She doesn't work here anymore." "Good," I blurted. He made a half small laugh, half huff, while I realized that even if it was what I thought, it was a bit rude and my mom raised me better than that. Maybe... He chimes in, "Don't worry, it's okay. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back." I didn't get any other details aside from the fact that they had the bottle of medicine I needed in the stock on Tuesday. So the woman was just nasty for, I don't know. I really hope she reconsiders her career path. In conclusion, kindness goes a long way, but don't forget to stand up for yourself. Thank you everyone for your support. So here's the crazy thing to me, don't you have to go through a decent amount of training to be a pharmacist technician like that? I remember about 10 years back, I was going to a technical school for a short period of time, and next door to my class, there was a pharmacist technician training course. Now, I don't know how long the course actually took, but I was under the impression that that wasn't a field that you just get hired in off the street like some minimum wage employee. It's just a crazy idea that somebody who is such a nasty person somehow went through the training and still is acting so boldly awful like that. I guess she doesn't have to really be a proper pharmacist, but definitely not the right field for her. Summary Captain commented, "I'm sorry you had to tell her why, but good for you for standing your ground. It's insane to me that a pharmacist, or maybe just clerk, depending on the place, would be that mean-spirited. It doesn't affect her job to give you what your prescription said, as if she knows better than you or your doctor. Hopefully the medicine isn't for an emergency, and that you'll be able to get it soon." Our next story is, Mormons need to learn that not everyone can be saved. I'm female and live in a predominantly Mormon area of the US. I was a single mother until my son grew up and moved out on his own. I actually grew up and was baptized as Mormon, but became disillusioned around 12 and spent the next 20 years trying to get them to excommunicate me. It didn't work, so I finally resigned. For some reason, the Mormons doubled down on trying to salvage me after I resigned. Sent missionaries to my house more often than others in the neighborhood. I finally managed to scare the missionaries off for 16 years. They would cross the opposite side of the street that my house is on at the bottom of my street and only cross back at the top of the street. Even men I work with are trying to push the issue. The latest one was giving his spiel on the ride into work. I looked at him and said, "You've worked with me for the past 3 months. Why on earth do you think that I would be part of such a male-dominated religion? I make my own money, support myself, supported my child until adulthood, don't have to do what anyone says other than the boss. I swear or drink and smoke. What about that leads you to believe I want some man in a suit telling me how to live my life?" Dumb butt actually had the nerve to try and tell me that Mormon religion is not male-dominated. I then asked, "So women are allowed to hold the priesthood and wear slacks to church now?" Not another word was said the rest of the ride into work, and he found a different carpool the next day. The missionaries knocking on my door today reminded me of that conversation. I ignored them and continued cleaning the bathroom until they went away. Now I'm off to plot how to scare them away for 16 years a second time. I'm thinking of having a door sign saying that religious peddlers will be sacrificed to the old gods, but also thinking of answering the door and saying, "Oh, I thought the coven said that they didn't have any blood sacrifices available. Come on in, it'll just take a few minutes to set up the altar." Update, I decided to go the nice route with getting rid of the missionaries. I called my cousin, the bishop that helped me get rid of the missionaries the first time this morning, and let him know that they were becoming a problem again. He agreed to make the appropriate calls and get me back on the no contact list. I am very grateful for everyone's suggestions. You all are the best. Thank you all. Update 2, I'm going to spend some time at Thanksgiving dinner at my mother's tomorrow, trying to find out who sent them after me again. If I find out, I'm going to donate $10 in their name, with their address included, to Scientology. Update 3, unfortunately a disappointing result. Thanksgiving at my mother's was filled with my stepfather's family, with the exception of my grandpa, so I wasn't able to find out who loosed the missionaries again. Grandpa has dementia, so I'm pretty sure he's not capable of letting them know to come for me. I will continue to attempt to find out though. Update 4, and now I feel a little like a jerk. A friend of mine was also suddenly being visited weekly and asked why they were there. Apparently, the local church has recognized that with the economy being the way it is currently, that there are families in need that would not speak up to ask for help. Their goal is to visit every home in the area, regardless of denomination and beliefs, and perform acts of kindness. Food, chores, toys for kids that may miss Christmas otherwise, firewood for heating. I realize I'm still too traumatized by how I was treated by my mother's side of the family to let them on my property, but I do realize they have an actual noble goal this time around. So, in my opinion, it's like, look, you can believe whatever you want to believe. But if you show up on my doorstep and I'm saying that I'm the kind of person that is deeply and confidently affirmed in my beliefs and to kindly stop showing up again, that means that you go away and you don't show up again. It's crazy because my mom was telling me about how a Jehovah's Witness showed up to her door one day and she made the mistake of answering the door and was roped into that 15-minute conversation where they were trying to save her or whatever. She said no, they walked away. I spent the night at her place, and in the morning, I get woken up really early by the doorbell and I look at their Ring camera and there's these two ladies. They're holding like a clipboard in their hand. They've got like ankle-length floral skirts on. Like you can tell they're dressed up, ready to roam the neighborhood trying to find people to save. I just stared at the feed until they eventually gave up and walked away. Thankfully, I haven't heard from her of them bothering her again yet. Fine Washables commented, I always greet people who are trying to convert me with, Hail Satan! It really does send them away immediately. Iron Lord Baturabo replied, I've had various people try to hand me various religious pamphlets at work, always handed them back saying, I'm happy with my current afterlife representative. Our next story is what happens when the I can fix him girl meets rage incarnate in a snake's body. I currently have two snakes that I love dearly, but previously had an older corn snake. He was a jerk that had a vendetta against anything. I rescued him not knowing his age, but knowing he was stunted growth-wise and meaner than snot. This dude would rattle his little tail if I looked at him too long, but loved people watching and would pop out when someone was in the room. All to say, while he was a jerk, he was my jerk, and we had a mutual understanding. I am the rat fairy and provided sustenance, and he would let me clean his tank with a few bites as a tip. Some snakes are just like that and I respect it. He's allowed to not like me. He was adequately named Lucifer. My husband made friends with a small group from work and invited them over once for dinner. One of them was this younger girl that very much gave the pick-me vibes and was talking big about how all animals just love and understand her. And obviously I was doing something wrong if Lucy was so mean. I proved a point by opening his tank, and he shot out like lightning to strike at me while I cleaned his water bowl. She was quiet, and I assumed I had proved my point. Fast forward a couple of hours, we were all sitting down after eating, just chatting, and the same coworker excused herself without saying much, but I assumed it was just for the bathroom. She came running down the stairs, bawling, holding her hand, which had two little crescent moons that barely broke skin. For what it's worth, it usually bleeds the smallest bit, but I cannot stress enough, it's the surprise that gets you. It does not hurt. The sentient spaghetti noodle from heck was a butt, but the teeth are so small it's hardly noticeable. My husband is much more tactful with these things, but even he was scolding her while cleaning the bite, and lucky he hadn't done worse. I asked what she expected to happen, that he would just forget all the anger in his tiny, scaly body and sing Kumbaya in the summoning circle I'm sure he had hidden in his tank. I mean, this guy was fueled by hateful thoughts and rage. He had no other mode. His dial was maxed out on ticked at all times. In my opinion, she deserved it. I mean, who sneaks into someone's room to try and, make friends with a jerk shoestring that has a taste for human flesh? To prove a point that she was the superior snake wrangler when I'd been this dude's maid for the last few years? I haven't seen her since, and she no longer comes to any company gatherings outside of work. Lucy has since passed, but his ashes reside in the windowsill facing the mountains at the top of my stairs. I swear I trip on the steps if I look at him too long, and I always think of him when the tree rattles against the glass like his angry little tail would. You know, I've heard people who say they feel like they have that exact thing. Some greater connection with animals, that animals somehow like them more than other people. I feel like it's misguided, and maybe some people give off less threatening energy, or they behave and have better body language in a way that wouldn't offset more animals more frequently. But surely you're not going to have some magical pheromone aura that's going to make a perpetually angry snake just somehow act completely differently. I mean, let's be real, that snake doesn't have much else going on in that mind. Starch Bomb commented, I have 2 corn snakes and a cat. It's the cat that behaves like this with anyone but me, because she's a jealous, possessive, IBD-riddled 8-pound monster. Everyone who has tried to befriend her, claiming, all animals love me, have been bested by her explosive intolerance. The snakes are rescues and behave perfectly. Thank you for giving Lucy a place to live out the rest of his days on his own terms. It helps that their bites are just spicy Velcro at best. Our next story is, dude insists I'm lying about my name and then asks me repeatedly about my daddy. He did not like my answer. I'm cool with chatting with a guest. That's part of my job, to make people feel at home even if you wish they were. But some people are so freaking nosy and weird, usually old men. So this dude comes in. He's a pastor in his 80s and he's there to do some kind of ceremony in town. I'll call him Joe. I greet Joe kindly and start checking him in. He starts going on and on about his life and the ceremony he's doing, and I'm nodding along as he's talking, but he keeps interrupting himself to ask, "Do you know what that word means?" And when I say that yes, I do know what it means, he responds skeptically with, "Really? What does it mean then?" He did this repeatedly. He interrupted himself to ask me if I knew what his words meant no less than 5 times. He also kept asking me if I knew how to spell certain words as I was filling out his address and such on his reservation, and then he rapidly switched gears and wanted to know why I didn't have a name tag on. Which, for the record, I don't wear my name tag because I deal with plenty of creeps and don't want them to know my name. Before I could answer him, he said, "I know that girls don't wear name tags because they don't want creepy people to know their name." Which, yep, that's about it. But he kept saying I should be wearing a name tag. I told him my name, even though I don't wear a name tag. I give my name when asked, I just don't advertise it. He said, "Yeah, right, that's not your name." Which, it's not even a weird name, it's fairly common. I told him that it most certainly was my name, and he kept insisting that I was lying because pretty girls always lie about their name when a man asks them. What the freak, dude? You get ticked I don't have a name tag? And then call me a liar when I tell you my name? For the rest of his stay, he insisted on following up my name with, "Since you won't tell me your real name." And he kept saying, "ma'am," at the end of his sentence, followed by, "Well, not a ma'am, but you know what I mean." No, I don't think I do. But the weirdest crap was when he started asking about my daddy. He made some kind of dumb joke that I fake laughed at. I can't even remember what it was. And he goes, "Oh, I bet you laugh at your daddy's jokes, don't you? You must love your daddy a whole lot." I ignored it because what the heck, that's weird, but he just kept going. On and on, asking questions about my daddy. "I bet you're a daddy's girl, huh? I bet your daddy takes good care of you, doesn't he? I bet you love your daddy so much. You probably go home at night and give your daddy a hug as soon as you go in, don't you? I bet your daddy is funny, isn't he? You laugh at your daddy's jokes, don't you?" Like, holy freaking crap, dude, I'm a grown butt woman living by myself, first of all. Second of all, tiny bit of context here. My daddy is in prison for the next century for, trigger warning, SA, over a decade. Anyway, that's the context behind this. Whenever someone gets incredibly nosy about something, I just give them what they want, and they usually don't like it. So I smiled politely at Joe and said, "Well, my daddy is in prison for the rest of his life for what he did to me, so he's really not around to tell jokes." I wish you guys could have seen the look on this man's face. He was freaking horrified. He stuttered and said, I'm sorry." I smiled again and joyfully said, "I'm not." Joe said, I'm gonna get some coffee. I'll be back in a few minutes." By the time he came back, all he had to do was sign the registration card and take his keys. Didn't say another word to me. He was thoroughly horrified. And hopefully embarrassed, but I don't know. I wouldn't count on it. That's what you get for repeatedly asking about my daddy, you freaking weirdo. I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume what OP revealed at the end maybe, unfortunately, is hitting a little too close to home for this guy. To be honest, I don't really want to analyze it much further than that, but I feel like for a creep like that who went on and on and on to actually shut up about it, it must have registered something deep inside that musty, rotten brain of his. Silent Wisdom 2012 commented, "Not sure he was embarrassed. Maybe it was fear, like he realized he could go to jail himself." Our next story is, explained in detail why my 11-year-old was in the mobility scooter. My daughter, 11, had severe scoliosis that was causing other health problems and progressing rapidly. She needed a spinal fusion that covered the majority of her spine and resulted in an incision from the base of her neck to the top of her pelvis. It was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, but the surgery went extremely well, and my daughter was so brave and strong. About a week and a half post-op, she was starting to get stir-crazy and we needed to restock, so I took her with me on a short trip to Target. It's important to walk around, but she couldn't make it far at this point, so I put her in the mobility scooter the store provides and taught her how to drive it. I walked alongside her at first because she was feeling a little self-conscious. We grabbed a few necessities while she got more comfortable, and when we got to the grocery section, I told her to go grab whatever snacks she'd like and call me if she needed me to reach something. After a few minutes, I met her in a side aisle to transfer her goodies to my bigger cart so I could send her, her older sister, and her younger autistic brother to the toy aisle to pick something out for a treat. All three were excitedly chattering about what they might get as I started the transfer, and I noticed an older lady standing behind us. I smiled and apologized, pulled my son closer to the cart as he tends to bounce around, saying, "Sorry ma'am, this'll take me a minute." I expected her to walk around like a normal person, but she continued standing there, and I saw my daughter go quiet. I finished the transfer and told my kids to go ahead while I finish up. This is when Karen made her move. She strides quickly alongside me, blocking the scooter with her cart. "Those aren't toys, those are for people who need them." I saw red. I don't think I've ever been more angry in my life. I said in a loud voice that she had a spinal fusion. Was that a good enough reason? I reached toward my daughter, shouting, "Here, honey, let's show her the incision." At this point, Karen goes beet red, says okay then, and is practically running down the aisle. I yelled, "Bye, Karen," and turned around to check on my kid. To my relief, she was vibrating with laughter. She said, "Mom, I think the whole store heard you." We got our stuff and went home. She healed up great, and if you didn't see the scar, you would never know. But PSA, if someone forgets their manners, make a scene and get them the attention they deserve. You know, I've stumbled across a lot of very gnarly things on the internet. One of them is a picture of somebody during spinal surgery. I mean, my God, I'm not going to go too into detail, but literally like all the way from the top to the bottom is just like split open. It's kind of horrifying to see. I think this just goes to show you can't presume anything when you see somebody in a mobility scooter. Overlord Kazumi commented, "Whenever I was with my mommy in a grocery store, I would return the carts for her and get weird looks. I always waited for somebody to try me, but they never did. My mom has heart problems that she only recently explained to me, but basically she doesn't get enough oxygen. So if she's walking for any amount of time or doing anything active, her oxygen levels drop and she can't think clearly, among other issues related to that. She usually takes the cart out to the car and I would return them and I would feel weird like I'm doing something wrong with the people looking." OP replied, "We did get a lot of looks too. I figured seeing her age and with her mom right there, people would get it, right? I was sorely mistaken." Our next story is the time I vomited blood during a work meeting. So this just happened over 5 years ago, but I was thinking about it today. My pregnancy with my daughter was incredibly unexpected. My husband and I, 25 at the time, had been told by our doctor that we were both medically infertile, low sperm count and PCOS respectively. We were given fertility medication to start with, as further procedures would not be given the green light until the initial options had been exhausted, and we're told that we were looking at about 5 years until the ball was really rolling. Well, we got pregnant with our daughter, first month on the medication. Surprise! While unexpected, she was very wanted, and we were over the moon. Except my husband was unemployed at the time, and I was working as a high school teacher with pretty rough kids. My pregnancy was also awful. I spotted constantly, had dizzy spells, and had hyperemesis gravidarum from 8 weeks until my daughter was born. I was throwing up about 10 times a day, was hospitalized for dehydration 5 times, and lost 18 kilograms over the course of my pregnancy. Fun times. In my department were 4 other teachers, Karens 1 through 3, and Pete, the sweetest boomer you ever met. The Karens were by the books what you would find in Australian public education, catty, calcified, and bigoted. I called in sick at least once a week because of my rough pregnancy, and they were constantly making nasty comments about it, both to my face and to other departments. Despite the fact that none of my work was ever left for them to do, it affected my professional life quite badly, and I often thought of quitting despite having no real option to do so. Cue trauma, the Karens insisted on weekly after-school departmental meetings that lasted several hours, despite never covering more than a post-it note worth of info. I had missed several, and the alpha Karen demanded I come to the next one. Sitting in a stuffy room while the Karens went over the latest Home and Away episode, I felt a wave of nausea. I stood and excused myself, but Alpha moved to block the door, saying that I could hold whatever it was for a minute while we sorted out a detail in a planning document. I asked Pete to pass me the bin at his feet, which he did eagerly, and I projectile vomited. Blood. See, the constant spewing had irritated my throat enough that it bled every time I was sick. My doctor knew about it, and honestly, it looked a lot worse than it was. The Karen stood in silent horror as the pale, gaunt, pregnant woman threw up blood in a bin, and Pete let out a piercing scream. He shouted at them to call an ambulance, but I waved them off, saying, "This happens to me all the time." After the dry retching stopped, I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, smearing blood everywhere, and asked if they still needed help with a document. They demurred, and I grabbed my things and left. The Karens never bullied me again, and instead only spoke to me in the softest of voices for the rest of the year as if I were dying. Glorious. So I think OP kind of missed the real trash cans here that they should have aimed for with their projectile vomiting, but I mean, you got the job done. Real talk, could you imagine though if OP just let it spew all over the Karens? Some kind of like horror show movie kind of thing where it just projectiles straight at them. Maybe I'm going a little too far with all the graphic detail today. Mocha Lattes commented, "I was hoping you were going to say you vomited on her, but seems your point got made regardless." Blurbo Kringle Fart commented, "You don't block somebody's exit. The laws may vary, but you're essentially detaining them at that point." Our next story is, embroidery's not just for girls. I've, 26-year-old male, recently started doing embroidery on my monorail rides home after work when the crowd empties out because I got sick of doom scrolling on my phone for so long, and it was a hobby I picked up in college that I'd been neglecting due to work fatigue and mild depression. Last night, I was working on refurbishing a cushion case with a curved mattress needle when this elderly male tourist, Caucasian, sunglasses on graying hair, polo tee and Bermudas, the works, boards the train, looks around, decides to sit a seat away from me when he could have had an entire separate row of 5 seats to himself on the other side of the car, and asks me while chuckling, "Embroidery's for girls, man. Why are you doing it?" Before he got on, I was already exhausted from just getting off a work-related PR event that I had to help set up since early morning, and thanks to my mom, I've grown up watching forensic series, CSI, Bones, NCIS, etc., while I did homework and she marked students' workbooks. With my patience thinner than the fabric of the cushion case I was working on, I huffed, flashed the widest psychopathic smile I could manage with my eyes bugged open, and wielded my very big curved mattress needle, still on the thread connected to the cushion case for him to see. I'm training to prepare corpses for funerals. Would you rather I practice through embroidery or from stitching your eyes and mouth shut? He suddenly went pale with an expression on his face like I told him his organs were about to be dissected and sold on the black market, and decided to move to the farthest seat away from me. And he didn't speak to me for the rest of the ride to the next stop, where he decided to avoid being the reason I end up in jail. Ideally, I would have slowly waved with a slasher smile from the train door when he looked back, but my cheeks were sore enough from smiling at the PR event already, and didn't think he was worth another rictus grin. I feel like OP is a member of the Addams family that managed to leak out into public society, and you get to see the contrast in personal behaviors and comforts. Maybe out of a Tim Burton movie or something, I don't know. Our next story is, if it's mine, it's my choice. This happened about 10 years ago, me in my early 40s when I was extremely fit and sporty with very nice shoulder-length curly hair. That summer, I was spending a lot of time outdoors under the scorching sun and my hair wasn't liking it. So I decided to go short. I mean, really, really short, pixie style. Now, there was this gaggle of old men who went to the same gym as me. They would be working out in short shorts with no undies, talk about low-hanging fruit, and always using a fake fatherly tone to hit on the younger women. The day after my haircut, one of them decided to grace me with his counseling. The old man said, "Good morning, young lady." Me, being respectful as my mama taught me, said, "Good morning, sir." He said, "What happened to your beautiful curls, girlie? They were so feminine and soft, and you just chopped them off. Now you look like a boy." Me, being more polite than he deserved, I said, "Well, I needed something more practical for the summer. Besides, it can grow back." The old man replied, "Now that's wrong. What did your husband say? Doesn't he prefer his woman with long hair?" Me, getting ticked by the minute, now showing the bless your heart smile my mama also taught me. "First of all, sir, I am not my husband's or anybody else's woman. Also, if he liked long hair so much, I would totally support him to grow out his own as long as he wanted. After all, we must make our own choices. Now you have a nice day, sir." And I left, even prouder of my amazing boyish hair. All I can say here, honestly, is that OP treated them far kinder than that old creepy man ever deserved. I mean, honestly, that old guy should have been reported for the creepy harassment. Most gyms don't support that kind of thing because, they like having clientele around. Everly Marston commented, "Love how you flipped it back on him without raising your voice. Men like that act like every woman's hair comes with a consultation fee, and you just reminded him it really, really doesn't." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy, traumatizing revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.